Queen Elizabeth I wasn't just a queen, she was a walking legend. She called herself the Virgin Queen, wore fancy dresses covered in jewels and ruled with a sharp mind and strong hand. People remember her for her powerful court beating the Spanish Armada and making England a strong Protestant country. But behind all that beauty and power, under the thick makeup and shiny pearls, was a woman full of fear, pride, and obsession. She cared deeply about how others saw her. And when it came to staying clean, things got really strange. It wasn't about staying healthy back then. It was about appearing good. And Queen Elizabeth made it a form of performance. She believed that water would sicken her. She was so fearful of aging that she treated her body as if it were a sacred artifact, something time or even soap couldn't touch. Here in this video, we will present to you 5 of the strangest and most surprising things Queen Elizabeth I did to keep herself clean. And the 5th one, you won't even believe it. Elizabeth was addicted to something very powerful: sugar. Sugar in those days was not something that could be afforded by all. It was very rare, costly, and imported from distant foreign lands. Most people may never have tasted in their lifetimes, but for the Queen of England, everywhere it was. She didn't merely eat sweets, she drowned in them. Her royal cuisine consisted of candied violets, sweetened fruits, sweet almond marzipan, and syrup-soaked sweets. To possess sugar was to flaunt your riches. Elizabeth didn't merely consume it, she used it to flaunt England's increasing power and riches. But the following is the horrific reality. This sugary vice had a ghastly price. During the 1500s, oral hygiene was rudimentary. Toothbrushes were abrasive, and the majority of citizens brushed their teeth with twigs, rags, or eggshells pounded into powder. The Queen, on the other hand, had her own secret concoction, a do-it-yourself toothpaste consisting of sugar and herbs. Sugar, the very substance poisoning her teeth, was what she applied to attempt to clean them. To add insult to injury, she also employed gritty powders that wore off her tooth enamel. Gradually, her previously royal smile transformed into something appalling. Foreign visitors commented on it. By the 1590s, her teeth had turned black, were broken, or were gone altogether. Her breath was also described as so bad that she made those around her uncomfortable, and in places, her speech was difficult to decipher because she was speaking out of a mouth of putrefaction. She would not allow doctors to have them removed. Elizabeth was stubborn and feared pain. To persuade her that it was not fatal, even one of her courtiers offered to have a tooth extracted in front of her. Picture that, someone willingly screaming in pain just to encourage the Queen to open her mouth. But the most bizarre thing was what followed. Instead of ridiculing her rotten teeth, her court noblewomen emulated them. That is correct. They blackened their own teeth using soot and charcoal to follow the Queen's appearance. In her court, even tooth decay had become a sign of status. If the Queen had black teeth, then black teeth equated to beauty, power, and wealth. The darker your smile was, the wealthier you had to be. In a world where whatever the Queen did turned into fashion, even rotting teeth became trendy. That's what royalty holds. You've probably heard the astounding quote, "I bathe once a month whether I need it or not." Queen Elizabeth I supposedly said it, according to some. Others claim that it was only legend, but that is what indicates the way that people thought about being clean during the 1500s and how odd it was in comparison to now. During that time, water was considered dangerous. It was thought to be able to spread disease, to sicken the body, and to emit foul air, something they referred to as miasma. This invisible poison was said to transmit deadly illnesses, such as the plague. To most, a bath was not healthy. It was dangerous. Queen Elizabeth skipped it. Rather than being washed in soap and water, she had an alternative routine. She washed her linen under cloth called shifts, often several times a day. They thought that the soft cloth drew sweat, dirt, and poisons out of the skin. No water, fresh fabric only. When she did freshen up, she employed rose water, vinegar, or herbal concoctions prepared by her royal apothecaries. These were applied to her skin by handmaids with a gentle dab. It was a slow, deliberate ritual, not for cleanliness, but for appearances. Her body was handled as if it were a holy artifact rather than human. It needed to remain flawless at all costs. Why not simply take a genuine bath? Because that was no easy feat. Her palaces lacked plumbing, running water. If she were to take a bath, that meant hauling out a large wooden tub, warming dozens of buckets of water, and summoning at least 3 servants to pour, stir, and prepare. Placing a royal ceremony was no more involved. Bathing was a luxury, not a way of life. And people referred to her as clean. She had hundreds of gowns fashioned out of fine silk and velvet. She smelled of spices and flowers. She wore perfume gloves, perfume handkerchiefs, and insisted on her appearance being immaculate from head to toe. But all this was an illusion of cleanliness, not actual sanitation. There was no scrubbing, no rinsing, no soap. Elizabeth hadn't shunned bathing because she was lazy or dirty. She had shunned it because too much reality would destroy her flawless image. Water might smudge her white makeup. Water might dilute the illusion. Water might make her human. And in her head, a queen wasn't supposed to be human. Queen Elizabeth's face is history's most well-known face. White as china, smooth as a statue, and cold as a rock. But that wasn't actually her skin. It was a mask painted on every day with meticulous precision, not for looks but for dominance. At her time, white skin equated to wealth, status, and even a blessing from God. The whiter you looked, the greater you were. So the queen pushed it to the limit. She wore no makeup at all. She employed it to create a myth, an unaging, never-weakening, perfect version of herself. Venetian Sousse, her favorite product, a lethal concoction of vinegar and white lead. It produced an impeccable appearance, concealing each shadow, scar, and blemish. But beneath, it was destroying her. This poison seeped into her flesh, leaving rashes, open wounds, and permanent scarring. As her true face was gradually wrecked, she merely applied layer upon layer of makeup, thickening and darkening, until her face was a stiff mask. But that wasn't enough. To line her lips, she employed vivid red dyes derived from mercury, one of the most poisonous substances on our planet. The more she applied it, the more ill she grew. Her temperament shifted, her memory was lost, her body grew frail, her hands occasionally shook. These are telltale symptoms of mercury poisoning. And the queen wasn't aware that she was poisoning herself each time she painted her face. So why continue to do it? Because her face wasn't hers alone. It was England's. Her portrait was her authority. It gave her the illusion of agelessness, godliness, inviolability. She forbade painters to reveal her actual features. Artists had to employ official face patterns that were traced from younger portraits instead. Regardless of how old she became, her paintings remained the same. Youthful, perfect, everlasting. She refused even to be perceived in natural light. Shadows and candles facilitated concealing the truth. In her later years, her skin was so fragile, people spoke in hushed tones that her face might shatter and break if touched. She hardly washed her face. Why would she? Washing it spoiled the illusion and exposed a frail, aging woman under the Virgin Queen's mask. Did she realize the makeup was killing her? Historians still argue it, but one thing is certain. She traded the mask for her health. She was happy to ruin her body to preserve the legend of Gloriana. To really comprehend Queen Elizabeth Hygiene, you must comprehend her greatest fear, losing control. Her every inch of herself, her painted face, perfumed gloves, and carefully selected scents wasn't about appearing good. It was about maintaining power and concealing weakness. During her day, bathing wasn't merely infrequent, it was dangerous. People thought water could be disease-carrying, and bathing exposed your body both physically and symbolically. It was regarded as soft, intimate, even threatening. And Elizabeth, who had seen her mother, Anne Boleyn, destroyed by the court, would not let herself be weak. To her, a naked body was an exposed body. So she stayed out of water, and created a new kind of cleanliness, one constructed of perfume and ritual. She encircled herself each day with pungent, sweet odors. Her maids made rose water, lavender oil, vinegar infusions, and herbal mixtures steeped in the palace still rooms. These fluids were not intended to cleanse the skin. They were intended to conceal odor and pretend at being fresh. A few drops behind the ears, a rub on the wrists, a scented handkerchief in her sleeve, and she would glide through her court like a bouquet of walking flowers, unscathed by human odor. She wore pomanders, small decorative balls full of herbs and resins, concealed in her dress or on her belt. Whenever a foul smell crept too close, she'd raise one to her nose and take a sniff of the controlled world that she'd created. These items weren't solely for comfort. They were a definite message. I am different from you. I don't smell like the rest of the world. Even her clothes were staged. Her gloves were perfumed. her handkerchief soaked in oils, and her dresses layered and stiff designed to hide her body and trap scent. She was known to give out scented gloves to her courtiers, a gift that didn't come from her skin but from her image. And as for her hair, it was rarely washed. Washing it was seen as dangerous, especially for someone who wore so much makeup. Rather, her actual hair was stiffened using sugar water and egg whites and powdered. When she grew old and started to lose hair, probably due to years of lead and mercury poisoning, she moved to wigs, particularly auburn ones, to maintain her appearance. But beneath all the powdering and perfume, her body was disintegrating. Years of poisonous makeup had deformed her skin, made it thin and blistered. There were rumors of peeling skin, open wounds, and a face too battered to touch, and yet she continued to paint it thicker and thicker. She even prohibited mirrors from her personal chambers. No one was permitted to view the reality, not even herself. It reported that she possessed a servant whose sole duty was to powder her shoulders in seclusion, in order to ensure that no one ever got a glimpse of her actual skin. Elizabeth was a prisoner of her own fantasy. Bathing wasn't omitted because it was difficult. It was omitted because it required erasing the disguise. To clean the body was to acknowledge that it was aging, cracking, human, and Elizabeth had devoted her entire life to keeping the world believing she was anything more than human. She used a perfumed walking stick in her later years. When she walked past stinky courtiers, she would hold it in front of her nose, not only to prevent the stench, but to remind all, "I am the queen. I do not belong to your world." Her body was no longer flesh and bone. It was the crown's symbol. It had to remain immaculate, even if it meant coming at the expense of the truth beneath. Cleanliness for Elizabeth was not about health. It was all about remaining untouchable. From the outside, Queen Elizabeth of Fura's palaces resembled heaven on earth. Huge stone walls, golden ceilings, velvet carpet, and music halls and silk-filled rooms. But step 1 inch beyond the royal facade, and you'd have discovered something decidedly less glamorous. No toilets, no sinks, no plumbing. That's correct. Beyond all the loveliness, the queen lived in an existence smelling like a sewer. Her innermost toilet was a highly ornate wooden chair known as a close stool. It appeared beautiful outside, but beneath the cushion was merely a ceramic bowl for waste collection. It was emptied by hand, washed, and scented several times a day, and it wasn't attended to by a servant. It was attended to by someone with kingly authority, the groom of the stool. Don't be fooled by the job title. This fellow was no janitor. He was a loyal noble, selected for secrecy and loyalty. He didn't merely assist the queen to the bathroom. He assisted her in dressing, in handling private affairs, and even participated in secret political discussions at times. In the bizarre realm of the Tudor court, being close to the queen in her most intimate moments was to be close to power, but the rest of the palace, much nastier. No flushing toilets existed, only chamber pots, buckets or bowls for waste which everyone used. These were emptied into cesspits concealed beneath floors or behind palace walls. Cleaning up all of this garbage was a job that fell to men who were known as gong farmers or night soil men. They were employed at night to carry buckets of human waste up dark corridors and down skinny stairs, not spilling as they dumped the muck into open ditches. It smelled terrible and never actually dissipated. To disguise it, the palace used to burn herbs such as lavender, rosemary, and sweet marjoram. Human beings scattered flowers on the floors and spread down straw or rushes that were impregnated with oils in an attempt to catch the smell. However, these rushes were not frequently cleaned. Filth, hair, crumbs, and rot accumulated underneath, and there was a secret layer of dirt. Not even the queen was able to avoid the odor. She would relocate her court from palace to palace, not for political reasons alone, but in order to avoid the stench. The more time she spent in one location, the more deplorable the problem of the waste grew. No perfume could disguise the reality indefinitely. This was the real face of life as a royal gold and velvet on the surface, but rot and sickness beneath. A realm where filth existed alongside power, where the most powerful woman in all of England was in constant struggle with the stench of her own kingdom. Queen Elizabeth didn't reign by default. She reigned with strategy, style, and smoke and mirrors. Her cleanliness wasn't sloth, it was deliberate. Every bath foregone, every splash of rose water, every powdered wig was all part of a grand show. In a time when a woman's power could be ripped asunder in a single scandal, Elizabeth created herself into something unapproachable, timeless and suprahuman. She knew the truth. To bathe was to risk the mask. Water might wash away her power, a bare face might invite judgment, a genuine aging body could ruin the illusion she had spent decades honing. So she powdered, she perfumed, she painted, she posed, and she became a legend. Elizabeth I wasn't clean by modern standards, but she was flawless by design. Soap and water in her world were not instruments of health, they were instruments of power threats. She did not merely survive, she became a master at being seen without being known. Ultimately, her real cleanliness was not on her skin, it was in her image. And to a queen, image was everything.